everybody, welcome back to the No Nonsense. Today, we're going to talk about periods. Yes, shout it out from the rooftops because we're not ashamed of our bodily changes and processes. So, menstruation or period is a normal vaginal bleeding that occurs as a part of woman's monthly cycle. Every month, a woman's body prepares itself for pregnancy. If no pregnancy occurs, the uterus or womb sheds its lining. The menstrual blood is partly blood and partly tissue from inside the uterus. This is, however, not restricted to females, as a transgender man can have periods while a transgender woman may not. Having a period can be stressful for trans folks because it is a reminder that their bodies don't match their true gender identity. This discomfort and anxiety is sometimes called gender dysphoria. Let's try and understand the process. So, why exactly does menstruation take place? Your menstrual cycle helps your body to prepare for pregnancy every month. It also makes you have a period if you're not pregnant. Your menstrual cycle and period are controlled by hormones like estrogen and progesterone. During your menstrual cycle, hormones make the eggs in your ovaries mature. When an egg is mature, that means it is ready to be fertilized by a sperm cell. These hormones also make the lining of your uterus thick and spongy. So, if your egg does get fertilized, it has a nice cushy place to land and start pregnancy. If pregnancy does not happen, your body does not need the thick lining in your uterus. Therefore, your lining breaks down and the blood, nutrients, tissue flow out of your body through your vagina. And voila, that's your period. It is as simple as that, but in reality, people find the entire concept of period to be a taboo. The stigma surrounding menstruation. Having a period is already quite stressful. Some suffer from conditions like menstrual cramps, which are throbbing or cramping pains in the lower abdomen. During the menstrual period, your uterus contracts to help expel the lining. Pain can include cramping and heaviness in the pelvic area, as well as pain in the lower back, stomach, or even legs. Some women also experience nausea, vomiting, paleness, diarrhea, or loose bowels. Premenstrual syndrome (PMS) is a collection of physical and emotional symptoms that start a week or so before your period. It makes some people feel moodier than usual and others bloated and achy. All this is then combined with stupid social stigma surrounding menstruation. This video is mainly about that. It is a topic that people are usually uncomfortable talking about and is typically a topic that is only discussed behind closed doors. This is because cultures all over the world have developed detrimental concepts and beliefs about menstruation. It is absolutely idiotic considering about 50% of the population experience it and the other 50% is aware that it exists. I mean, barely, but they do, right? First, let's start off by bitching about some other countries because, come on, why not? For example, in Venezuela, many women are forced to sleep in huts for the duration of their menstruation. In rural Ghana, menstruating women are forbidden from entering a house with a man or from cooking food. I mean, this also happens in India. I don't know why I'm. Okay, fine. Many young women don't have an access to any type of sanitary pad, which can cause them to miss school, and the lack of pads or health practices can cause them to be 70% more likely to have reproductive tract infections. So, menstruating women continue to be viewed as contaminated and impure, often restricted and forbidden to engage in activities like touching water or cooking, attending religious activities or cultural ceremonies or other community activities. Menstruating women or girls can be even banished to outside sheds according to customs, where they suffer in cold and isolation, often at the risk of life threatening infections and attacks. Manufacturers of sanitary products are discreet in their messaging. We are discreet about our conversations about that time of the month. If someone in a classroom has their periods, even in urban areas, there are silent whispers in an attempt to ask for pads. Why are you shy about something that people already know happens to you? India's population includes 225 million adolescent girls who are uncomfortable, lacking confidence, feeling dirty, and who are uninformed about their bodies. Many are not educated about their bodies like they should be before hitting puberty. There is a chapter in 8th standard or maybe ninth for some called reproduction, which is meant to explain this process. Now we all know how this chapter is taught and how a bunch of over enthusiastic boys pretend to know everything already. When in reality there is nothing learnt by anyone and those boys just know shit of porn, which again is completely not realistic. We all sit there making faces and just completely embarrassed, and boys used to sit those with a look of disgust on their faces. It is generally embarrassing in India to talk about sex, to talk about our sexualities, to talk about our bodies. And also, by the time this chapter is taught, we are already 14, and most girls have their periods when they're 12 or so. How exactly is this supposed to help me? In India, a woman on her periods is not allowed to go to the temple, enter the kitchen, touch a jar of pickles, and whatnot. While with access to sanitary napkins, she can now maintain proper hygiene during those 5 days. The stigma still manages to make her feel unclean and dirty. The household casual dehumanization of women for their bodily functions, which is out of their control, is just plain brutal. But then we get used to it, so we don't find it weird or surprising. The origin of these customs. So, when I am already so dead against all of this, I am also generally curious and willing to understand all about the origin and what these customs used to imply. Historically, in many Indian cultures, menstruation was considered auspicious, and menstrual blood was even served up as an offering to goddesses, according to historian Narendranath Bhattacharya. As quoted by scholar Janet Chawla in Mythic Origins of Menstrual Taboo in Rig Veda, the menstruating woman was often treated like a goddess, as if society was amazed at how women could bleed out of their bodies and not die. I mean, yeah, that's one thing, but offering blood, I don't think that is a good thing, but fine, whatever. In certain parts of Assam and Orissa, the rituals of menstruation of goddesses are celebrated during the monsoon season, Chawla had written. A common belief was that both fertile earth and women must rest, be venerated, and celebrated. It all started there. It started at celebrating fertility, and now everybody is being punished for something that is not under their control. The manifestation of menstrual taboo is a phenomenon which rooted in the Hindu mythological text called the Rig Veda. Indra went to womankind and asked them to take his guilt of killing a Brahmana upon themselves via a regular cycle of repentance, aka menstruation. In the process of doing so, Indra was able to wash away sins every month, and women are subjected to eternal pain, that is through menstruation. So, the consequence of this ancestral ideology that has been passed over and over generations is still biting women in the uterus till date. So, women polled in a study called Cultural and Social Practices regarding menstruation among adolescent girls said that their body emits a smell or a ray that has the power to turn food bad. Okay, I am a effing food technology student, and I can literally guarantee you that is not how it works. अपना अपना बना लोगे तो बैक्टीरिया क्या घास चरने गई है? So, the historical association of menstruation with evil spirits has also influenced practices where women bury the clothes that they use to observe period blood. Remnants of the goddess Rheotic still exists and present in so-called period parties common in South India, where families throw a big celebration for a girl upon her first period, dressing her up in finery and giving her gold. But those exist to celebrate fertility of the girl, and from the next period the normal degrading treatment resumes. So I tried having a conversation with my mother regarding this, and she was pretty accommodating. Though I was not informed prior to going through periods about reproduction, she had been successful in explaining all this to me afterwards, and my dad was also instrumental in this. Clearly no one had ever talked to me about good touch bad touch, but I guess parents these days are quite aware than they used to be. So I asked my mom about why period blood is considered to be impure, and she was like, women have a bad energy surrounding them during periods. And I immediately argued that Google did not agree. She told me that when you are tired and you can't focus on anything, and stressing your body to work at that same time, it is nothing but bad. Women back then were hence made to sit back in one corner all day, allowing them to give their body the required rest. I then asked her why on the ground in one corner, and she replied that because there were no sanitary pads, the beds would be ruined. She also continued telling me that people were also not allowed in temples for this reason. The blood kept dripping as there were no sanitary pads or anything like that to contain it. Ash and pieces of cloth were used, but they weren't effective for movement. So, walking around doing household chores required you to move your legs, and the moment you move your legs, your blood might start dripping, which is not healthy and is also gross. So, therefore, over 77% of menstruating girls and women in India use an old cloth which is often reused. Further, 88% of women in India sometimes resort to using ashes, newspapers, dried leaves, and husk sand to aid absorption. I do understand what went down back then. It is just a plain lack of resources situation, but sanitary pads exist now. So do working independent women. So, why does this entire stigma still exist? What to do? There's just one answer, according to me, which is talking it loud and clear. The challenge of overcoming the socio cultural taboos and beliefs in menstruation is further compounded by the fact that the girls' knowledge levels and understanding of puberty, menstruation, and reproductive health are very low. Not just the girls, but even the boys have to be explained the normalcy of this. Adult women may themselves not be aware of the biological facts or good hygiene practices, and instead keep passing on the cultural taboos and restrictions to be observed. If the general taboo around menstruation is removed, then talking about it and finding solutions can also be made easy. So, talk it out. Talking it out is always the best thing that we can do, because we have been provided the gift of speech and the ability to comprehend. So, let's please do that. This is your no nonsense signing off.